Look at this picture. On one side, thousands of police personnel, barricades, government machinery, an administration that controls billions of rupees, millions of employees, and the entire machinery of the state. And on the other side, a few students, no weapons, no political power, no authority, just placards, and a belief that they deserved to be heard. Now, here is the question: why would a government this powerful be concerned about people simply sitting on the road? Because history teaches us something that every ruler eventually learns. Power is never challenged only by weapons. Sometimes it is challenged by ideas. And ideas are far more difficult to suppress. The protesters at Delhi's Jantar Mantar didn't begin as a movement to change governments. They began with something much smaller. A question: was justice done? But over the following days, that single question grew into something much bigger. It became a debate about accountability, about power, about democracy, and about one uncomfortable truth that every government, sooner or later, has to face. In a democracy, the people are never powerless. If you have never prepared for a competitive examination, it's difficult to understand what it really means. People think it's just another test. It isn't. For millions of young Indians, one examination can decide the direction of an entire life. Behind every candidate, there's usually a story. A father working overtime, a mother quietly selling her jewelry, a farmer taking another loan, a family postponing every celebration because first let the exam be over. Years of preparation, years of sacrifice, years of hope. That's why examinations are different. People don't just expect results, they expect fairness. Because the moment people lose faith in a fair process, they don't just lose confidence in an examination, they begin losing confidence in the system itself. And that's exactly why what happened at Jantar Mantar much bigger than an examination. It became a question of trust. There is something unusual about this road. To most people, Jantar Mantar is just another place in Delhi. But over the years, it has become something much more. Whenever ordinary Indians feel that nobody is listening, they come here. Farmers came, soldiers came, women came, students came, environmental activists came. Different people, different demands, different governments, but the same message: listen to us. That's the beauty of democracy. You don't need to start a revolution. Sometimes all you need is a place where citizens can peacefully ask a question. And that's exactly what Jantar Mantar has become. Not a battlefield, a conversation, or at least that's what it's supposed to be. Because what happened next changed the entire mood of the protest. There is an old saying: sticks and stones may break your bones, but words can never hurt you. History says otherwise. Sometimes words change governments, sometimes they start revolutions, sometimes they unite people who had never even met each other. During the protest, something unexpected happened. Comments made during judicial proceedings were widely discussed outside the courtroom. Many protesters felt these remarks dismissed their concerns instead of understanding them. Whether one agrees with that interpretation or not, the effect was undeniable. People who had come to protest an issue now felt they also had to defend their dignity, because human beings can tolerate criticism, but humiliation is just something else. And history has shown that once people believe their dignity is under attack, movements grow much faster. Not because they are organized, but because they are emotional. Here is something worth thinking about. Most protests don't last. People become tired, they go home, lives move on. So why didn't this one end quickly? Because by now, it wasn't just about an examination anymore. It had become something much bigger. People were asking a different question. If ordinary citizens can't question those in power, then what exactly is democracy? Think about it. Every 5 years, We stand in long queues, we vote, we choose a government. But after that, what happens? Do citizens simply disappear for every 5 years? Do we get only one day to speak and then remain silent until next election? If democracy worked that way, it wouldn't really be democracy. It would simply be a periodic transfer of power. Real democracy is different. It allows governments to govern, but it also allows citizens to question. Not because governments are enemies, but because governments are human and human beings make mistakes. Here is something fascinating. The people who wrote our constitution knew that one day citizens would disagree with governments. They knew governments would sometimes make unpopular decisions. They knew mistakes would happen. That's exactly why they protected something extraordinary: the right to speak, the right to question, the right to peacefully assemble. Notice something important. The Constitution doesn't say support the government, it doesn't say oppose the government. It says something much wiser. Whatever your opinion, express it peacefully. That's a remarkable idea because it tells us something fundamental. A protest is not a sign of democracy has failed. A peaceful protest is often proof that democracy is still alive. Of course, this freedom comes with a responsibility. The same constitution that protects peaceful assembly also permits reasonable restrictions to protect the public order, security, and the rights of others. Rights and responsibilities always travel together. That's how constitutional democracy maintains balance. About 300 years ago, a philosopher asked a question that sounds surprisingly modern. Why should anyone obey God? Think about that. Not who should become king, not which party should rule, but something much deeper. Why should governments exist at all? The answer changed human history. Thomas Hobbes believed governments prevent chaos. John Locke argued government exists to protect our rights. Jean-Jacques Rousseau went even further. He said governments don't own power, people do. Governments simply borrow it for a limited time on certain conditions. That idea became known as the social contract. And once you understand that idea, something remarkable becomes clear. Governments don't give democracy to people. People give democratic authority to governments. That changes everything. Because if power comes from the people, then asking questions isn't an act of rebellion. It's part of the agreement. And that's exactly where every government faces its biggest test. Winning an election is difficult. But remembering who gave you that victory is even more difficult because history tells us something uncomfortable. Almost every government, no matter which party it belongs to, eventually begins to believe that criticism is opposition, that questioning is a disloyalty, and that electoral victory means unlimited authority. But does it? Or is a democracy designed precisely to prevent anyone from becoming too powerful? That's one question we'll explore next. Because the events that followed at Jantar Mantar were no longer just about students. They became a reminder for every political party that in a constitutional democracy, governments may exercise power, but the people remain its source. Let's be honest, winning an election isn't easy. A political party spends years of building an organization. Thousands of workers campaign day and night. Millions of people place their trust in a promise. And finally, the people vote. A new government is formed. That's democracy. But something interesting often happens after that. Slowly, almost without noticing, governments begin to see themselves differently. The language changes. We have a mandate. The people have spoken. And that's true. They have. But here is the question. Did the people give a government complete freedom for 5 years? Or did they simply give it the responsibility to govern? There is a huge difference between those two ideas because a mandate is not ownership, it's a responsibility. Imagine hiring an architect to build your house. You trust them, you pay them, You let them make decisions. But does that mean the house now belongs to the architect? Of course not. The architect works for you. Democracy works in exactly the same way. Governments are trusted with power, they don't own it. Here is something history teaches us. Every generation believes its leaders are different. Every ruling party believes we are the exception. But history has a habit of humbling power. Every government, no matter its ideology, eventually faces the same temptation to mistake popularity for permanence, to mistake criticism for hostility, to mistake the government for the nation itself. But they are not the same. A government is temporary, the nation is permanent. A political party is temporary, the constitution is permanent. A leader is temporary, the people are permanent. That's why democracies survive changes in government because the system is built to outlive those who govern, and perhaps that's the greatest achievement of the Indian Constitution. It never asked us to trust individuals, it asked us to trust institutions. When we think about democracy, our minds immediately go to politicians, parliament, cabinet meetings, election rallies. But think about it. If every politician disappeared tomorrow, would India stop functioning? Hospitals would still open, teachers would still teach, farmers would still grow food, scientists would still conduct research, judges would still hear cases, soldiers would still guard our borders, citizens would still wake up, go to work, pay taxes, and build this country. Because the real strength of a nation has never been its politicians, it's a people. Politicians don't create the republic, they administer it. There's a difference, a very important difference. As the days passed, the pressure grew, the issue dominated public discussion. Questions were asked, answers were demanded. Eventually, the Union Education Minister resigned. For some people, that was a victory. For others, it was a political setback. But perhaps both sides missed the bigger picture. The real story wasn't the resignation, the real story was accountability. Democracy isn't about ensuring that governments never make mistakes. It's about ensuring that when mistakes happen, there is a peaceful, constitutional way to demand answers. Sometimes that leads to policy changes, sometimes to investigations, sometimes to resignations. The form may differ, the principle remains the same. No public office is beyond accountability. When the crowds leave, when the television cameras disappear, when the slogans fade away, one question remains. Did we learn anything? Not just the government, not just the opposition, all of us, citizens, media, institutions, political parties, because every political party dreams of coming to power, and every political party, once in power, faces the same test. Can it still listen? Can it still accept criticism? Can it remember that power was never meant to be permanent? Maybe that's the real lesson of Jantar Mantar. Not that one side won, not that another side lost, but that democracy worked the way it was designed to work. People spoke, institutions responded, politics moved, whether slowly or quickly. The system moved, and that's infinitely better than a system where people are never allowed to speak at all. There is a reason the constitution doesn't begin with we the government or we the parliament. It begins with the three simple words we the people. Three words, yet they contain the entire philosophy of Indian democracy. In the final chapter, we'll ask one last question. If the people are truly sovereign, what responsibilities come with that power? Because democracy doesn't survive on rights alone, it survives when citizens use those rights wisely.